Welcome to another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. There's no fancy music this week. Unfortunately, we have some pretty bad news coming out of Australia, and out of respect to the victims, I just don't feel like playing fancy, happy music today. And it's kind of sad because I had planned this whole episode about Hanukkah and about the Festival of Lights and a happy topic. And thanks to global anti-Semitism, globalizing the Intifada, we had an attack that killed 11 people, at least at this point, and harmed at least 50. And the whole thing got thrown out. So for this week's podcast, it might be a little bit scattered, but I do think that I could find a way to possibly work this all in to hopefully try and explain a little bit what's going on in regards to Hanukkah, the first night, and the way that we are seeing the world turn against the Jews. And as is always the case, it's never the first time this has happened. We're seeing it repeat itself. I've done podcast episodes in the past about Hanukkah. One was about the JVP, or Jewish Voices for Peace BS version of Hanukkah, one that's supposed to be anti-Zionist. And I did another one about the actual story of Hanukkah. So if you want to go back and listen to that one, you can. But generally speaking, most of my listeners probably understand the story of Hanukkah, even if it's misunderstood in the West. The West typically sees it as some type of Jewish version of Christmas, which it definitely is not. And the irony in why the JVP had to create a different type of Hanukkah is because it destroys their narrative. It is a holiday that is absolutely Zionist and talks about the fact that the Jews threw out their colonizers and brought back their own culture to their land and regained sovereignty in their land. Something that is incredible for the Jews and not so incredible for people who pretend the Jews had never stepped foot into Israel. But the theme of this story and this holiday, frankly, is the triumph of the Jewish people to overcome all obstacles, including people who wanted to make sure we never practiced our religion, a government, an official body who was trying to outlaw our religion. This is the Greeks who were trying to make us Hellenized. And we fought back, and we stopped them. And we said we will practice despite all threats, despite imprisonment, despite even being killed. We rededicated our temple to our God and kicked the colonizers and the occupiers and those who wanted to stop Judaism out of our land. And this is what makes the recent incident in Australia so difficult to try and digest. Here we are celebrating a time and a holiday where we said, we don't care if you try to stop us from practicing, we're going to practice. And they were doing it in public in what is supposed to be a free Western country, and they are killed for it by people in that Western free country. We have people who are actively trying to stop Jews from practicing under threat of death. This is in 2025. And of course, you're going to say that, well, these people don't represent an entire country, which is absolutely true. But unfortunately, that same country has allowed this type of behavior for over 2 years. This didn't come out of nowhere. We saw mass protests where they literally screamed in Sydney, Australia, gas the Jews, put them into gas chambers, kill them. And no one really said anything about it. The anti-Semitism was allowed to rise and continue. So are we surprised then, when the government did nothing to help the Jewish people, that this would happen? It's just the next evolution of what you would expect. You let people be anti-Semitic in private. They then became anti-Semitic in public and no one stopped them. They then started to harass or attack Jewish people on a small scale, ban them from their businesses, say Zionists are not welcome here, and no one said anything about it. The government didn't stop it. So sure enough, the next step would be, maybe they'll let us kill them too. And only time will tell really what's going to happen. One of the shooters was killed on the scene, but the other one is still alive. And we'll see how the Australian government reacts to it. Is it going to be some sort of slap on the wrist? Are they going to full-throatedly condemn it? Are they going to play some sort of both sides thing? That this is somehow Islamophobia and anti-Semitism? Because if they kind of ignore it or downplay it or say it was just someone with mental health issues, even though they were screaming Allahu Akbar and targeting Jews, it's just mental health. It's not anti-Semitism. It's not hate. If they play that idea, then surely you're going to tell the next people that it's okay to do it. And we've actually seen that exact thing already happening in other parts of the West, places like in Europe, in America, and to some extent even Canada. We've seen people who have done very clear anti-Semitic things, and they whitewash it and say we are not sure what their motive was. We know they attacked Jews and they said free Palestine, but it could be for any reason. It's just political, a coincidence. The more you downplay it, the more you are allowing it to happen. It's how you get from someone saying gas the Jews to someone else actually killing Jews. I have said on this podcast and to many of my friends that the monster that these governments created by not acting has grown way out of control. They have completely lost control of their own monster. They allowed this stuff to happen thinking, well, we don't want to anger our voters, so we'll allow a little bit of anti-Semitism under the guise of anti-Zionism or anti-Israel. We'll let them walk through the streets with pro-Pali flags pretending this is about politics, but we know it's not. What did everybody think they meant when they very clearly said globalize the Intifada? The Intifada being the killing of Jews in the streets, in public. This is, in Australia, the globalized Intifada, even if you pretended that wasn't the case. They said it pretty clearly, but nobody wanted to believe them, which only allowed them to actually implement the Intifada, like we're seeing right now. And now they really can't go against those people anymore because they are so strong and powerful and out of control that we just kind of sweep it under the rug and pretend it's just a mental health issue. It has nothing to do with Jews, nothing to do with Israel. It is a tragic reality that all of these governments have allowed the toothpaste to get out of the toothpaste tube, and you can't put it back. These anti-Semitic mobs have now gained control, and it's almost impossible because of their numbers, because of their boldness, because of their willingness to essentially do anything without fear of consequences, that police have taken a step back. You can see these rallies where they are literally allowed to go and be anti-Semitic, to say anything they want, to raise Hamas flags, and no one says anything about it. Material support for terrorism? Who cares? I can't arrest them because they're in a crowd of 7,000 other people doing the exact same thing. And interestingly, what I was going to talk about on this podcast before all the incidents in Australia was a current event going on in Canada right now that is incredibly important and also incredibly scary. Many of you probably don't follow Canadian politics, but in Canada, there is currently a Liberal government, much like the Liberal governments pretty much all over Europe and Australia. And they have been sort of whitewashing this whole anti-Semitism issue. They've placated, they've paid lip service, but they've really not acted to save or help Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is skyrocketing here and left completely unchecked. So recently, it was actually a little bit of a surprise that the Liberal government was trying to pass anti-hate laws, which to many people, especially the Jews, sounds great. According to the Canadian government, the Liberals, Bill C-9 aims to amend the criminal code to strengthen how Canada addresses hate propaganda, hate-motivated offenses, and intimidation or obstruction to access religious cultural spaces. It seems like, on its face, a pretty good thing. It's why many Jews welcomed the idea to finally stop all of this anti-Semitism from just being allowed to go on, because the police and the politicians claim that this doesn't fall under the current laws that we already have. So let's create new hate laws to stop it from happening. Unfortunately for the Canadian government, the Liberals, they don't have a majority currently in the government. So it means they need to work with another party in order to get enough votes to pass this law. So in order to pass this law, they have had to make a deal with a party called the Bloc Québécois. This is a French-Canadian party that is pretty much entirely only in Quebec, representing the French Canadians. Some of the amendments that are being proposed by the Bloc, which would be required to be added in order to get enough votes to actually pass it, they have demanded that in this amendment, they remove the ability to use a religious exemption for these laws. Just for a little bit of a background for my non-Canadian listeners, the Bloc Québécois is dealing in Quebec with a terrible influx of anti-Semitism and hatred against all non-Muslims, to be honest. They have these public prayers that are taking up streets, purposely blocking streets. They are praying openly in front of churches in order to harass the churchgoers, to not let them get inside. And so the Bloc Québécois is trying to ensure that they remove the freedom of religion as an excuse to do these type of things, to use that freedom of religion against other religions. So the craziest part is that it's supposed to be protecting the Jewish community, and frankly, all communities, and this amendment goes into action. It's possible that there will be no exemption for religious beliefs, which could mean that someone saying, let's say, for example, they are anti-LGBTQ for religious reasons. This is a very important issue for Catholics who are very anti-LGBTQ when it comes to their religion. If they said that publicly, if a priest said that in their church to their followers, they could actually go to jail for hate crimes. This also would affect rabbis and imams and many other people who go out and preach from their religious texts. And if someone finds it offensive, an atheist doesn't like what you're saying, maybe they could lock you up for hate crimes against atheists, for example. How dare you promote anti-atheist ideas? And I'm offended by it, so you get to go to jail now. It is a very slippery slope what the Canadian government is trying to do. I hope in good faith that this is in fact about hate crimes. It is about material support for terrorism by wearing Hamas outfits, and you can be charged with a crime for that. Those are all good things, and it's about frickin' time. It's been 2 years of literal Nazis and Hamas wannabes walking through our streets with the police saying there's nothing we can do. But are these laws actually going to help? Or are they just going to be more laws that are going to be ignored? There are currently laws on the books that are supposed to stop these hate crimes. And yet, apparently it doesn't work. Or at least they're not willing to actually do anything about them. So creating new laws, is it really going to make it easier to stop people from being anti-Semitic? From committing these crimes against Jews? People have been murdered in Australia. That's against the law, and yet it still happened. None of these laws actually stop them from doing it. What we do need to see is action by governments, calling out this thing, telling them that we do not accept this in our country. These are not our values. Ironically, the Canadian Prime Minister not that long ago, in a speech to a bunch of imams or at a mosque in order to placate for their votes, made a point to say to them that Islamic values are Canadian values. Maybe, hate to point this out here, he should be willing to call out the fact that there are some people amongst that Islamic community, based on their religion, beliefs, whatever, are anti-Semitic and are acting in a horrible anti-Semitic way. But you can't do that because, God forbid, you offend those people. So we pretend that they're all the same and that there's no problem going on here in the Islamic community, unfortunately. If you're not willing to acknowledge the truth, then how are you ever going to fix the problem? Meanwhile, we've seen in Canada from 2022 to 2024, anti-Semitic incidents up 124%. And surely not all of them are Muslims, but we have seen the actual Muslim people out wearing Hamas outfits with Hamas flags, waving them, calling for an intifada against Jews. So they are there. As much as you want to pretend that they're not or that we don't really know who these people are, they are publicly in the streets. And they are calling for the death of Jews. And it is only a matter of time before those calls become action, just like in Australia. So will this bill do anything other than just punish speech? I don't know. I don't know if we can put this toothpaste back in the tube. We can try and put Band-Aids on it. But if we're not willing to actually call it out for what it is, nothing is going to change. The most scary thing is what could be the worst case scenario for this bill in Canada, which is the government now stopping Jewish people from practicing their religion because it might offend someone else. How quickly until the Muslims are offended that we are celebrating, let's say, Israel's independence? You're not allowed to do that. That offends us for the Palestinian people because it's a Nakba, not an Independence Day. Or maybe soon enough they're going to outlaw public displays of Hanukkahs and menorahs, because God forbid those are public and it might offend the JVP-style anti-Semites who are offended by the fact that we're saying that the state of Israel once existed. Or even funnier, which is actually a thing that happens today in Iran, is the Jewish holiday of Purim, where we talk about Queen Esther and the killing of those Persians who wanted to kill us. Many times they've used that as some sort of anti-Semitic idea that we celebrate genocide of their people. They, of course, ignore the fact that they tried to genocide us first and we were stopping them. But what do we do when these things now become outlawed under this new law? This law that's supposed to apparently protect the Jews while forcing them to not celebrate their holidays or not be able to believe what they want to believe? It's kind of sounding a little bit like the Greeks telling the Jewish people of Israel that, don't worry, just act like us, celebrate our holidays, and you'll be all good. In the end, I know this podcast episode might be a little scattered all over the place. It started off as hoping to be something about Hanukkah and about the way that the Jewish people overcame all of the tribulations and issues that they faced with the Greeks trying to force them to be more like them. But unfortunately, world events proved that Jews around the world, not just in Israel, are dealing with the same issues that they were dealing with back in the time of the Greeks to today, when we have people like the Australian government doing very little to actually protect Jews, and almost, by not doing anything, making it open season to try and stop Jews from practicing in public. And then we have Canada on the other side. Canada pretending that they're trying to pass laws to protect Jews. We're not sure if they actually care. Meanwhile, might inadvertently cause people to actually punish Jews or be more anti-Semitic and even anti-Christian, anti-Muslim, and anti-free speech. You're going to punish everybody, and the Jews will still be treated poorly. It's possible that the Jews won't be able to practice any of their things in public ever again, because the Canadian government, in an attempt to try and solve a problem, creates a new problem. And the most ironic part about this is that this is easily solved with common sense. The common sense of the West actually speaking out against the anti-Semitism, speaking out against the murder of Jews, saying this is not Canadian values, this is not the Australian way, and actually dealing with the root of the problem, rather than putting a Band-Aid on a situation or blaming it on some random mental health issue. This is a huge problem that none in the West are actually considering dealing with. This Hanukkah season, we only have to remember the fight of the Maccabees and the Hasmonean dynasty in order to not allow them to extinguish our light, literally and figuratively. No matter what happens, people trying to stop us from practicing in public, people threatening us and making you fear going to one of these public lightings, or even a government trying to stop us from practicing our religion indirectly because we've lost the religious exemption to our free speech. We cannot stop fighting for our faith, for our religion, and even for our lives. And for any of our non-Jewish listeners, go look for a Hanukkah menorah lighting in your area. Show up. Be an ally. Support your Jewish community. Let them know they are not alone. We cannot allow the other side to win, to stop us from practicing, or dare I say, for trying to outlaw our light and the light we bring to this earth. May the memories of those who were killed in Australia be a blessing to those around them, and may the people who have been hurt and harmed by this incident, may they have a speedy recovery, and may God help them through this very difficult time. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.